Fashion is often dismissed as a carousel of vanity, a seasonal cycle of the new and the now. But once in a generation, an artist arrives who treats the runway not as a shop window, but as a confessional booth. Alexander McQueen was that artist. He didn't just design clothes, he designed nightmares, fantasies, and armor for the modern soul. To look at a McQueen show was to peer directly into the psyche of a man who was perpetually at war with the world and himself. He was the hooligan of the East End who conquered the salons of Paris. He was the tailor who could cut a coat with the precision of a surgeon, only to rip it apart to reveal the vulnerability beneath. Today we explore the trajectory of a genius who felt too much, saw too far, and left us with a body of work that remains the high watermark of fashion as high art. This is not just a story of success, it is a story of the transcendental power of pain. To understand the radical nature of Alexander McQueen, one must understand the grit of 1970s London. Born in Lewisham, the youngest of six, Lee was the son of a taxi driver and a teacher. There was no inheritance of silk or pearls. His inheritance was the gray sky of the East End and a keen observational eye. While his peers were drawn to the street life of London, Lee was mesmerized by the birds in the sky, an obsession with flight and feathers that would define his later work, and the way his sisters dressed to go out. At 16, he left school with a single O-level in art. He walked into the prestigious Savile Row, the world's most disciplined center for men's tailoring. Here, at Anderson and Shepherd, he learned the architecture of the human form. This is the crucial foundation often missed by his critics. McQueen was a master technician before he was a provocateur. He learned how to manipulate heavy wool, how to pat a shoulder to give a man presence, and how to dart a waist to create a silhouette that didn't just fit the body but commanded it. There is a legendary story, perhaps a myth, that Lee scrawled, "I am a cunt," into the lining of a suit destined for the Prince of Wales. Whether true or not, it symbolizes his lifelong defiance. He was in the establishment, but he was never of the establishment. He was learning their rules so he could systematically break them. He was building a toolkit of traditional skills that he would eventually use to dismantle the very idea of traditional beauty. In the early 90s, McQueen enrolled in the master's program at Central St. Martin's. He was a diamond in the rough, technically superior to his tutors but socially abrasive. His graduation collection, Jack the Ripper Stalks His Victims, was the first time the world saw the McQueen DNA. It featured human hair sewn into the linings, a reference to Victorian prostitutes who would sell their hair for money. It was dark, it was fetishistic, and it was brilliant. It was here that he met Isabella Blow, the eccentric fashion editor who would become his mentor, his muse, and his greatest champion. Isabella saw through the foul-mouthed exterior to the fragile poet within. She bought the entire collection for $5,000, paying him in installments. During these lean London years, McQueen lived on the fringes. He was inventing the bumster trouser, pants cut so low they exposed the base of the spine. The media called it builder's bum. But for Lee, it was about elongating the torso, creating a new predatory proportion. He was making women look dangerous. He famously said, "I want people to be afraid of the women I dress." This wasn't about misogyny. It was about empowerment. Having witnessed domestic violence in his youth, he wanted his clothes to be a psychological shield. In 1996, the fashion world was rocked by a tectonic shift. Bernard Arnault, the head of LVMH, appointed McQueen as the successor to John Galliano at Givenchy. The house of Hubert de Givenchy, the home of Audrey Hepburn, and Breakfast at Tiffany's, was being handed over to a 27-year-old from the East End. The French press was horrified. They called him l'enfant terrible. His debut collection for Givenchy, inspired by Greek mythology and drenched in gold and white, was a critical failure. McQueen himself hated it. He felt like a caged animal in the Paris ateliers. The seamstresses didn't speak his language, and he found the French bourgeois sensibility suffocating. However, the Givenchy years were a finishing school for McQueen. With the limitless budget of LVMH, he pushed the boundaries of what was physically possible. He began mixing technology with tradition. He used medical equipment, surgical plastics, and rare feathers. He was refining his vision, learning that he could use the luxury of Paris to fund the rebellion of London. This period solidified his status as a global titan, even as it began to exacerbate his feelings of isolation. He was a punk in a palace, and the crown sat heavy on his head. To watch a McQueen show was to participate in a ritual. He didn't believe in pretty runways, he believed in sublime experiences. The sublime, in the romantic sense, is the intersection of beauty and terror. The Three Pillars of the McQueen Stage, number 13, 1999. The finale featured model Shalom Harlow in a simple white dress, standing on a rotating wooden deck. Two robotic arms, the kind used to paint cars, began to attack her, spraying her with yellow and black paint. It was a moment of profound vulnerability, the machine versus the human. The audience wept. It was the most beautiful act of vandalism in history. Voss, 2001, a giant mirrored box. The audience sat for an hour, forced to look at their own reflections before the show started. When the lights went up, the interior was revealed to be a padded cell. Models, including a Kate Moss hologram, acted like inmates in an asylum. It was a critique of the fashion industry's gaze and his own struggles with mental health. Plato's Atlantis, 2010, his final completed collection. It was a vision of a future where humans have evolved back into sea creatures to survive global warming. The armadillo boots, 10-inch heels that looked like alien carapaces, became the iconic image of the era. It was the first fashion show to be live-streamed, and it crashed the servers. It was the perfect marriage of nature and technology. The pace of the fashion industry is a meat grinder. McQueen was producing 10 collections a year. The pressure to innovate, to shock, and to sell was relentless. Behind the scenes, the boy who could fly was losing his wings. The suicide of Isabella Blow in 2007 shattered him. He felt he had lost the one person who truly understood his soul without wanting a piece of his brand. In early February 2010, his mother, Joyce, the woman who had defended his right to be an artist since he was a child, passed away. For Lee, she was his last anchor to the world. On February 11th, the eve of her funeral, Lee Alexander McQueen took his own life in his London home. He left behind a void that has never been filled. He wasn't just a designer, he was a mirror. He showed us the darkness of the Victorian era, the brutality of nature, and the fragile beauty of the human spirit. His legacy lives on in the Savage Beauty exhibition, which drew millions of people who had never bought a piece of couture in their lives. They didn't come for the clothes, they came to see the heart of a man who dared to be completely, terrifyingly honest. Alexander McQueen once said, "I want to be the purveyor of a certain silhouette or a way of cutting, so that when I'm dead and gone, people will know that the 21st century was started by Alexander McQueen." He succeeded. He didn't just start the century, he gave it a soul. The bird in the cage is finally free, but his feathers remain scattered across the world, reminding us that even in the dark, there is beauty.